I'm Diane Blazek. I am the Executive Director for National Garden Bureau and All America Selections. And I'm going to toss it over to, let's hear, who's next? I see John. John, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, John Baldwin. I am in Westfield, Indiana, which is just a little bit north of Indianapolis. I am retired, a retired IT professional, and I have been a master gardener for 7 years. And I worked for about 6 or 7 of those years in the Marion County Purdue Extension Demonstration Garden, which is located at the State Fairgrounds, and is a AAS winner for several years. So I've moved out to the north part of Indianapolis now in a little town called Westfield, and so I am in a different county than I was. So I'm working as a master gardener in another garden here in Hamilton County. All right.
Bring all of your expertise and ideas to another garden. That's great. So thank you, John. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself? Let's hear. We can flip over to Holly. Why don't you introduce yourself while Michelle gets her volume going?
Okay. Hi, I'm Holly Wise from Cornell Cooperative Extension in Oneida County, and that's in central New York. And I've been with the Extension Coordinating Master Gardeners for 30 years now.
Okay, something is still not working. Let's go to Terry and then we'll bounce back to Michelle again.
Hi, I'm Terry James. I am an extension educator within the Department of Agronomy and Horticulture at the University of Nebraska. I am the State Master Gardener Coordinator, and I manage what we call our Backyard Farmer Garden, which is an All-America Selection display garden.
Awesome. And Jenny Boxell.
Hi, I'm Jenny, and I am the the display garden coordinator here at AAS. I'm the person that sends you all of the communications and helps with seed ordering, plant ordering, and the verification.
Thank you. Mark Conlock.
Hello, Mark Conlock, Director of Horticulture at Green Bay Botanical Garden in Wisconsin. I've been here 19 years, and we've been a AAS display garden for almost that long. We show off the edibles and ornamentals, and we're also an AAS trial site for ornamentals in seed and ground.
Excellent, thank you. That is our program committee. These are the people that are helping us come up with a lot of new ideas for the display garden, determining next year's landscape design challenge, the contents of this webinar, etc. So I'm going to take the poll down now, but it's very interesting. I think you guys would love to have that $1,000. We're going to end that. And there was one other thing. Oh, I know what else I want to tell you. I think it will be much better if you put your Zoom on speaker view. It will be much easier to look at just the speaker instead of everybody on the meeting, and you will also be able to see the screen easier. And just as a reminder, if you turn off your video, it's going to help our bandwidth. We won't have some of these delays in that. So with that, we are going to get started with our best practices webinar. And I just wanted to put up a quick little table of contents, so to speak, for our webinar today. These are some of the topics, and we're going to toss it around to each one of the program committee members so that they can talk and share their expertise on these different topics. But what we're going to start with is Jenny and I were just going to kind of give an overview of the display garden program. FYI, this is one of our newest AAS winners. It's called Shake Raspberry. So this one was just announced about a month ago, not even, maybe 3 weeks ago. But this will be one of the petunias you get in your seed shipment this year. So what is a display garden program? And it's interesting when we have new people come on our board where they look at our budget and they see that a very, very large part of our marketing budget is to support our display gardens. So I think that helps explain the importance that you guys have to us as an organization. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do near the job we do in promoting the AAS winners. So it's really a partnership between you, who reaches the public, and our breeders that are coming up with all of these new varieties. and we are facilitating this partnership. Mark mentioned that they are also a trial site. So we have about 80 different trial sites throughout North America, throughout US and Canada. So it is horticulture experts that are growing these new varieties. And if they score high enough to become an AAS winner, then those are the varieties that we are sending out to the display gardens for you to put in your gardens to show and showcase these varieties, educate your visitors, etc. And also the breeders are donating the seeds and cuttings for this program because it's part of their marketing budget as well. So that's a little bit of an overview, and then I'll toss it over to Jenny for the second half of that overview.
Okay, so you get these great packets of seeds every year from us, and we also provide signage, big AAS display garden sign at no cost to you, and the option to add variety markers that we will send with your seed shipments. We also have a lot of educational resources that you are welcome to use on the AAS website. I encourage everyone to log on and look throughout the whole website, not only on the info for display garden tab, but there are lots of resources. You can use slideshows and bench cards and variety markers, etc. And all that we ask is that you grow these in your gardens, label them appropriately so that all of your visitors can see that they are AAS winners, and help spread the word about AAS.
Excellent. And by the way, if anybody has any questions, they can put those in the chat and we'll answer them either as we go or toward the end. You know, if it's something we know we're going to cover in the webinar, then we'll just save it. But feel free to ask questions because any questions that you put in chat, we'll make sure we follow up in future display garden dialogues and that. And if there's anybody who still has their microphone on, I hear a little scratching background noise. If you could mute yourself, it would be very helpful. Thank you. So I think this next slide, Mark, will go over to you, and you're going to tell us about how to plan the garden. This is one of the first steps. You're going to be getting the seeds soon, so I'm assuming planning has already begun for some of you. If not, Mark's going to give you some tips.
Yeah, so the first part to creating any garden is to plan it in the first place. So Jenny just did send out the display garden dialogue that has that seed list. So that's a really good first step in the process, is to take a look at all the seeds you're going to get that are national winners and then regional winners specific to you, and kind of take a look at all those plans and think about ideas of how you can use them with the inspiration you might have gotten from other design challenge winners that you can see on the AAS website, ideas you've gotten from visiting other gardens. They might have been display gardens. They might just be really, cool gardens you visited over the summer. Maybe you've hopefully taken pictures of them. The National Garden Bureau also has the Year of program. So sometimes we'll look at that and see if there's similar crops that are being promoted and AAS winners, that we can kind of like tie those two things together to get, two birds with one stone and promote that and use all the National Garden Bureau material for those plants. Other art, Pinterest, gardening books, or other things that you all probably use for your other gardens that you design. The main thing is incorporating the AAS winners into this garden. The other quick points are to look at the AAS website, because there's a lot of really good information on the winners you'll get, but also previous year's winners or other crops that you might want to include based on what your theme is. So take a look at that website, because it also has a lot of good winners from other years that you might want to incorporate into your garden design. And then the next slide has some other information that, really your design could very well be dictated by if you decide to participate in the Landscape Design Challenge, which I encourage you to do, or at least do eventually in your time with AAS. And this year, the theme is STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So thinking about how you could use those plants in that design challenge would be, pretty important in the design of your garden. So when you do that, you might want to have a committee of people that helps you. If you're a master gardener group, you probably have a lot of people kind of inputting into the design process. In our garden, we have one of our horticulturalists, take this project on and be in charge of designing it. And another quick little tip that we like to do is we'll take pictures of different plants from the web or the AAS website and put it into a PowerPoint slide to kind of like get an idea of what the garden might look like. a lot of times those are pictures of flowers, not entire plant form, but you kind of get the gist of it. And then we put all of our information into a big spreadsheet with the name of the plant, the amount of seeds we're going to start, like a big production schedule of how we're going to time everything out in our production cycle, which kind of ties in to what Diane and Jenny will be talking about, receiving the seeds and how you grow them on to actually put into your garden.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, ordering plants and receiving seeds. Jenny, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So for the seeds, for display gardens, you do not need to order seeds separately. We automatically send you those in December. You do have the option in early fall to order plants to be delivered to your gardens in the spring. So that is the only thing you actually need to order. So just to clarify that. And you'll get the last 3 years of seeds, plus if we can get some of the winners that were announced in November, we throw those in as kind of a bonus. And we would just suggest once you get the seed shipment, take note of everything you have. Just keep track of what you're getting and how you're going to plant them. If you cannot plant all of the seeds that you are given, you can give them away, donate them, and put them to another use.
And so what I wanted to say is that we are trying something new this year, and we're using we're outsourcing the seed packing and shipping. So it will, if things go as planned, we just sent an email this morning that they will start to be shipped out next week. So it is a test year. We will apologize ahead of time if there's any major problems, but this is what they do as an occupation, is they are seed packers. It makes it a lot easier on us here in the office. And our hope is that everything goes 100% smoothly. Okay, so can somebody just give me a quick nod? Can you still see my screen? I've got 1 or 2 people saying they can't see my screen. Okay, so it's still showing. And then on to this one, which is planting the garden. And Michelle, can we hear you now?
Okay.
I think we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
wow. Okay. It has like an X through my audio, so I thought it wasn't working because I had so much trouble. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Bedanza. I work at the Norfolk Botanical Garden in Norfolk, Virginia. We're directly next to the airport. If you ever have a layover, we do have a gate that goes from the airport over into our garden, and you can come visit for free if you do have a layover. So come say hi if you ever have time and you're in the area. Would love to give you a tour of the garden.
Okay, and then did you want to also talk about planting the garden, this slide?
So we had started with a dedicated AAS flower bed, which is near our kitchen garden, and we've really enjoyed having that. We've had that for over a decade now, and interestingly, we in the past 2 years had the idea of letting that spill over into our kitchen garden. So the AAS selections always include both a selection of lovely annuals and perennials, but also a lot of vegetables. And we've started including those into our kitchen garden. And that's a really kind of a unique situation that we have master gardeners that help us maintain that kitchen garden. And because of the vigor of those AAS selections that we've started incorporating heavily into our kitchen garden, that has allowed us to really up the amount of food donations that we've been doing for the local food bank. So just this past summer alone, because of doing more AAS vegetables in our kitchen garden, we were able to donate over 100 pounds of produce this year. So it's been really cool to see how it's sort of morphed into kind of 2 projects now, the more floral focused AAS bed, and then incorporating those selections into our kitchen garden. So there's definitely a lot of different avenues that one could go within those selections. So it's been really fun for us to do that and see and watch their performance, and then, like I said, give back to the local community with that produce.
Great. And as far as planting the garden, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one of our panelists had talked about how to have volunteers sign up for planting times. Who in our panel was using some of these? Somebody used Sign Up Genius, Seed Time, somebody uses Google Docs, somebody else has a proprietary system. Does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can pull that into the next slide, Diane, for volunteers if you'd like.
Okay, I think because the next slide is all about volunteers, right?
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, you go right ahead, Terry.
Yeah. No, great. Thanks. So it's a pleasure to be able to speak with all of you today. I'm just going to focus on getting some help in our gardens. Oftentimes there's just maybe one or two of us that are managing a space, and sometimes it's overwhelming. So as the state master gardener coordinator, I get to be able to work with master gardeners and help teach them, and then help manage them within our garden here. So I found some kind of tools of the trade that really work well. Picking a specific day for those volunteers to come, specific day and time, so that they kind of know and put it on their calendar. And that way they know when they're going to be working. Oftentimes being there with them to work with them is very beneficial. They don't want to kind of overstep their bounds. And if you're there to kind of help guide them, that's usually better and you'll get a better result. Being able to allow them to call their space their own. I ask my master gardeners, what did you see this year? What did you like? What would you like to see? Oftentimes with what we get with the display garden seeds that we get, I actually go and then buy some other plants to help really accentuate what is the AAS sends us. So they really like to see some new things that we can purchase and try out also. And then recognizing their time and talent is really important. We actually on Saturday, I'm bringing all my master gardeners over to my house, and we're going to have kind of an end of the year celebration. A dinner, and it is Big Ten championship football, so we'll have the football game on the background, and then being able to celebrate the success that we had. We just in our own garden, we have both vegetables and ornamental flowers, and we raised and picked just at 1,400 pounds of produce and donated that. So, and organizing them really has been kind of a little bit of an issue. We do use email quite a bit, but we also use Sign Up Genius for some special projects. That's actually a free one that you can use. There's also Seed Time. That's a newer one. I haven't used that one, but I've heard that one is getting to be kind of some good traction. And then even just if you have Google Docs, they have a form and Google Docs and spreadsheet, those kinds of things that you'll be able to share around. Those are also good ways to be able to help kind of organize some of your master gardeners and volunteers.
So before we go to the next slide, I'm just going to offer up a chance for everybody in the meeting chat. If you have some other ways you celebrate successes among your staff or volunteers, why don't you just post those in the chat, and we can kind of accumulate ideas, and then we can use that in a future newsletter of here's some best practices, here's some tips. So Terry, now I'll go on to your next slide.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the other ways that we do this is we actually recognize some of the schools that have volunteered too. Being able to, like, if you do have the extra seeds and stuff, being able to donate those back to that school so that they can use that either in, some of their display gardens or some of their classroom projects. Sending out those thank you notes, just the simple thank you note, telling people that you appreciate them being able to help you out, that goes a very long way. It doesn't take very much time to sit down and write a quick thank you. One of the other ways that we do is, especially if you have stakeholders that are involved within your garden, we do track volunteer hours. And like I said, we track the donated produce also. And then you can go to the independent sector. That's an online site. And you can actually look up what the value of your volunteer time is per hour and give that to some of your stakeholders, having them show them that dollar amount of what your volunteers have donated to your garden really does go a long way when you're working with stakeholders.
So that's interesting, Terry. So what you do is you present like the value of the total volunteer hours so
Yep.
that the stakeholders recognize the value of your volunteers. Is that right?
Correct. So if I had, 1,000 volunteer hours and it's at $30 an hour, then, that's a pretty big number that people can go back and say, this is the amount of time. So, a dollar number often goes a long ways with some stakeholders.
Great, thank you. Okay, so my next two slides are going to talk about promotions. So I put on here, how would you spend 1,000? So I'm going to share the results of the poll that we had earlier. Hopefully that popped up for you. It's pretty general. I think most people would want to order more plants, but they also want better variety marker holders. They want to have some older AAS winners. They might hire a videographer or photographer, or they would host an event for local media. I'm sure there are some other options, and you can always put those in the chat because this is all about best practices and sharing things with each other. But as far as promotions, we want to talk a little bit about social media. Here we are on various social media channels. We're definitely on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We use Pinterest, which I know is not social media, but it is a way to share. Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. The new one's called Blue Sky. That one's very low on our priority, we'll put it that way. But one of the things that's important is that if you follow AAS, we will be able to tag you. And that way you will be able to tag us as well. And that means each post that you have will reach a larger audience. And that way we can see what you're doing as well. So that's always good. If you have a local garden club, maybe you could invite them in to tour, give a little presentation to them. Same holds true for local media. Maybe you have a local newspaper and you want to invite them out at the beginning of the season and you want to explain, well, these are AAS winners. This is how they became an AAS winner. So come on out, we'll give you a tour. Who doesn't love pictures of pretty flowers and vegetables? So if you invite them out for the day, I'm sure they'll get some great pictures. I think earlier Jenny mentioned some pre-made PowerPoint. So we do have a link or we do have them posted on our website. And as soon as we get new PowerPoints made with the new winners, we post them up there. For the most part, they're downloadable and you can customize them yourself. If they're a PDF, they're not as customizable, but you can always get in touch with me or Jenny, and we will certainly send you anything you might need in terms of PowerPoints that we've made. And somebody just asked, can we see the pre-made PowerPoints? Tell you what I'll do is when I send out an email after this, I'm going to send a link to all of our PowerPoints. Can't switch over my screen right now because I don't trust myself to be able to come back to the presentation, but I will send a link to the PowerPoints in an email follow-up after this webinar. So thank you for asking about that. We talked about local media and then some additional ideas. This might have come from one of our panelists, I think, is throughout the growing season, they choose a plant of the week. And that gives frequent visitors something else to see. They'll put some signage up and they'll make sure that, like if they have tour guides, anybody working or volunteering in the garden, they know what that plant of the week is. Maybe they write a little column for the local newspaper and highlight a plant of the week. Maybe your garden has a newsletter that goes out. You could feature that. So I love that idea of plant of the week. Maybe you should be a guest. I do this quite often on podcasts and on radio shows, TV shows sometimes, is offer up your services to, hey, I can come on and do a 10-minute segment explaining what's in our garden this week or what's different about our garden this year. Anything that you can do that's going to inspire people to come visit, better for your garden, better for us as the ones behind the AAS winners. I put this up here about a pre-recorded presentation. I now have to do it because I have promised it to you, but I can do a basic, and I will do this, a basic, what is All America Selections? And that way it won't be dated with current winners, but I'll put together kind of a short one that explains what the trialing process is, who the judges are, how they look at the entries and rate them. And that way it'll just be pre-recorded. And if you want to show it, then you can show it. And then after the fact, maybe do some specific AAS winner demos or slides or something like that. So I promise I will have that for you by the beginning of the year. If you look on our AAS website, we have some blogs. We post maybe about 10 or 12 per year, so it's not as frequent as what we do with National Garden Bureau, but we have blogs, and you're more than welcome to maybe put a link in a newsletter or use some of that information in some webinars or seminars that you host. And speaking of National Garden Bureau, a lot of times AAS winners are mentioned in those blogs, so feel free to use anything on the NGB site. That's ngb.org. So you can use either of those. Another huge thing to talk about is the Landscape Design Challenge. If you've not yet participated, I would certainly encourage it. And I think what you're going to hear a couple people say on the rest of this webinar is that by participating in this Landscape Design Challenge, it brings some rejuvenation into your staff and into your volunteers and getting them involved and coming up with new ideas, but it also gives you something to talk about with the public. It's, oh, well, we have a new display this year. Oh, we have this theme that's centered around X, whatever the theme is for that year. So I think it would be very rewarding for you to try jumping into this Landscape Design Challenge. And Jenny's going to give you the theme for next year at the end of our webinar. Variety markers, there's a nice picture. Those are free for you. We send them out. Obviously, if your garden standards don't allow you to use our blue and white variety markers, you can make your own, but using variety markers is definitely a must for a display garden. And it works great in your promotions because then people know about this AAS winner. And now that we have QR codes on our variety markers, your guests, your visitors can scan that QR code and go right to the website to learn more about that specific variety. Oh, use blooming plants or cut flowers. A couple people were saying, oh, well, at the end of the season, we had this little luncheon for our volunteers and we cut some of these zinnias and used them as cut flowers. So again, just using those in multiple ways will help get more visibility for those winners. Last but not least, please, if you go onto the AAS website under Find a Display Garden and you have a very generic picture there, that's because we don't have a picture of your garden. So please send that to Jenny, and that way we will have a current picture of your garden on our website. So, okay, I think I've talked enough about promotions, but I'm kind of passionate about it. Now I'm going to toss it over to John, and John can talk about some best practices when it comes to garden management.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm equally passionate about cover cropping. I just think it's one of the best practices that you can do in the garden, and it's so easy to do with maximum benefit. And it's best for preparing new or rejuvenating existing garden beds. And you can see the benefits are many, improving the soil structure, the tilth of the ground, reducing weeds, recycling nutrients, improving soil fertility, attracting pollinators. All of those are benefits. In fact, there are no cons, really. There are lots of pros, but absolutely no cons. With minimal investment, you can yield great rewards with using cover crops. Usually, folks will, when their garden is done for the year, they will go ahead and clear the garden beds, and then put in some cover crop seeds in the fall, and then they can return to those in the spring and take care of the chopping of the cover crop. And then next slide. So the typical types of seed that you would put in are clover, pea, and lentils, and those are nitrogen fixers. Grains and grasses like wheat, rye, and barley are great soil conditioners for the subsoil, and also increasing the microorganisms that are in the soil, and also organic matter production. And then the radishes and mustards are great for controlling pests and weed suppression. On the right there, you can see a sort of before and after. And what happens in the fall, you will start these seeds and then let them grow through the spring until they start to bloom. And then you will finely chop those until they drop and are evenly distributed throughout the bed. The nice thing about once they're done is you don't really need to turn the soil. All you need to do is just clear out a little spot for where your plants are going to go and drop those in. And so it reduces the amount of turning of the soil, reduces the amount of fertilizers that you're going to use, and definitely with all the mulching that's going on, reduces the watering needs of a particular bed. And I've seen transformations of poor soils into high quality, rich and fertile soils by regular cover cropping. So you can definitely expect greater garden production for flowers and vegetables. And then it's just such a simple thing to do and very low cost, and the benefits are many. So when this document is sent to you folks, there are some references in there for a lot more detail about how to do this, but it's a pretty simple thing, low cost, great benefits. All right.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And yes, I think you provided 3 different references. So we're going to be sending this presentation out in a PDF form after the fact, along with a recording. So be looking in your email probably tomorrow for that, and you'll get all the references and all the details. So thank you, John. Now we're going back to Terry to talk about harvesting the garden, what to do with all this produce and how to make the most of it.
Yeah, so here in Lincoln, Nebraska, we're lucky we have a program called FoodNet, and we've partnered with a local church that offers us FoodNet. And on Saturdays when we harvest our garden, we take it down there. Like I said, we harvested about 1,400 pounds of produce. So if you have a connection within your local area and you don't really know what to do with that produce, if you do have the vegetable piece of the display garden, that's a great way to go and harvest. Especially one of the things that they really like and being able to add additional stuff to your garden are herbs. It's amazing how many people love fresh herbs. So we usually have a lot of fresh herbs that go later in the summer too. And again, keeping track of some of that data and giving stakeholders numbers. There's a little bit of numbers. So averaging, you get about 2.5 servings per pound of produce. So you can actually tell people how many servings you've provided to that food bank or food pantry. And then as an average, this is a number from the USDA, it's about $1.99 per pound for the produce. So if you know how many pounds of produce that you're donating, you can multiply that by $1.99 and then get a grand total of a wholesale price of what people are doing. So really being able to keep track, we actually do keep track of the specific plants. So tomatoes, peppers, we divide all that up so we can kind of keep track of that also. And then being able to share that out at the end of the year data is really fun. And master gardeners or your volunteers are really excited to kind of see those grand totals. And each year, even in our garden, we're like challenging ourselves to see how much more we can grow the next year. And then, you know, oftentimes we really had kind of a big drought here in the summer. Being able to see some of those numbers go down too when you have some of those environmental issues. So.
And I want to interject two things here, Terry. First of all, I think everybody knows, but just in case, when you do your verification or when you apply in the very beginning, keeping in mind this can always change, but we ask you, are you interested in flowers and ornamentals only, vegetables only, or both? So if at some point I saw somebody asking questions about a kitchen garden, like let's say you have an ornamental display garden and you want to add vegetables, that is something you can always do during the verification process in the summer. Is if you want to add one or the other, you can do that. The other thing that I want to say about this harvest and tracking the amount of pounds or servings donated, we're talking amongst our group, and we think next year as part of the verification process, we're going to offer a way that if you have vegetables and if you're keeping track and are donating, we're going to ask you for those amounts, because then that way it helps us say, hey, we had 150 display gardens and they donated 1 million pounds of produce to their local food banks or whatever the case might be. So keep an eye out for that next year during the verification process. So if you're tracking it, please report it in your verification, and then we can make a big deal out of it. So sorry, Terry, I just wanted to interject that. We'll go to your next slide.
Yeah, I was going to take this one, Diane, but you pretty much just said what I was going to say, which is okay. The only thing that I think you might have mentioned is that would be offset probably a year because of people would still be harvesting when the verification typically happens. So you would report in 2026 your 2025 produce number. So make sure you squirrel that away somewhere where you can find it in 2026. And the other quick things I were going to mention that I didn't have on the slide is, you know, the other thing to consider is container grown vegetables, because there are some that are winners that are specifically containers. So make sure about, you know, considering how to incorporate containers into your display garden. Even some of the ornamentals are winners that are better in a container than in the ground or maybe in a raised bed. And the other thing I was going to mention was when you're harvesting some of the different vegetables, you know, it can be hard with the tomatoes and peppers that, you know, have different colors. So take a look at the AAS website or the QR code link, because that can be pretty helpful to volunteers that are helping you harvest, to, you know, be able to harvest them at the right time for the best tastiness of those vegetables. And the other thing we do at our garden is work with like other partners like Terry does. So Brown County of Wisconsin has a Planting for a Purpose program that's also part of the Green Bay Packers Give Back program. So they donate seed potatoes to us, and then we'll harvest those potatoes and donate to their program. We give them a weekly tally of the different vegetables, and then at the end of the year, they total the whole thing up for us and we get a certificate. So it's another way to promote our program through all those different community members at Green Bay.
Just had to slip in that Green Bay Packers mentioned, didn't you, Mark?
Oh yeah, we're going to beat the Lions.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Okay. And let's see. I think my list is right that the next one's going to be Holly.
Yes.
About planning for next year.
Yes. Planning for next year, keep good records, create a calendar, track what you're doing with your volunteers. I work with the Master Gardener volunteers, and we have set days that we work in the gardens. Take photos throughout the entire season, and then jot down any ideas, successes, and talk about it over at committee meetings. And then create a production schedule when to start the seeds. And we look to the All Americans selections right on the website and get the information on there. And it's really helpful for us, and keep track of harvest quantity and height.
Excellent. Okay. So that's our year in the planning, planting, promoting of your AAS winners, the 3 Ps. There's probably even more there. But now what we wanted to do is we wanted to go to each panelist and just have them take 2 or 3 minutes about one of the things that they've done in their garden that they feel is a best practice. In some cases, I visited these gardens and I was wowed by one particular thing. So we're going to have all of our panelists go through and just talk about their garden's story or success. So we're starting off with John.
Yes, the Purdue Extension Marion County AAS demonstration garden, which is on the fairgrounds, state fairgrounds in Indianapolis, which is right downtown actually. So it gets a lot of visitation when the state fair is happening in late July and on through August. It's a very, very large project, maybe approaching 1/4 of an acre. But in terms of planning, planting, maintenance and harvesting, it's just a big deal. It's a year-round project. And of course, it's a Design Challenge award-winning garden. It's just jam-packed with AAS flowers and vegetable winners every year. It's just a real beauty. But planning for the garden and the annual AAS Display Challenge typically is about a 2-month effort for the group, and usually begins in early January. And so how do we plan it? Because it has to be done in a very efficient way, obviously. So there's a core group of about 10 to 15 volunteers, and we meet usually once a week, virtually, usually using Zoom, for a 2-hour planning session. And again, once a week. That group uses an interactive mapping program that I managed to find, and we use that to then place precise locations of each flower and vegetable plant onto an existing digitized garden base map. So the mapping application then is on a shared screen so that the volunteers on the Zoom session can all see the live map. And so as objects, plants, flowers and vegetables are added, they can see where those are going to go. And of course, there's always negotiation, there's always compromise. Some people like the plants here, some of them like them there. And so having an interactive live mapping tool allows us to make those adjustments on the fly so that everybody can see them. Following, after a Zoom meeting ends, then I will edit the file to make it more presentable, because sometimes things move so fast that all I can do is barely keep up with the conversation. But once that's done, I will edit the map and then create a PDF of that map, read-only sort of visualization of it, and then I will that map then will be sent around to everybody who participated in that week, so that they can prepare for the next week, so they can review what was done and then make plans for what we will do the following week. So they're every week for about 2 months. Everybody will get a PDF map, and then at some point we end the planning successfully always. And then there's a final map that goes out to everybody. And then that final map becomes our planting guide for where everything is going to go. And so there's other pieces and parts to this. And I would be glad to, if anybody has any questions or wants more details about how this works, I would be glad to address that. So just send Diane an email to request some more information, and she can put you guys in touch with me, and then I can tell you exactly what we do. This is sort of a broad overview here, but I can be more precise. So that's what we do.
Okay.
And Yeah.
We have several people asking what the name of the interactive mapping software is.
It's called Curve. It's a product that works only on iMacs. So it's an Apple developed system, which it works exceptionally well, and they take good care of it. So it's always being updated, but it's a incredible tool. Has multi-layering in it so that you can put in a base layer of where your beds are, what those beds are named, and then the numbers of the beds. And then you can begin to build layers and then take layers off. So you can have I want to just see the flowers. I just want to see the vegetables. So you can put all those in different layers and then visualize them and then take them off. So it's a pretty easy tool to use in that regard. So,
well, maybe
right.
Maybe we'll have you do a webinar for people interested in Curve, and we can come on and you could actually show how it works. Because it looks like there's a lot
I would,
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would be glad to.
Thank you so much, John. Let's see here. And now we are moving on to Mark to tell us a little bit more about his community partnerships.
Yeah, so one of the things we've done with our garden is kind of like try to tie a whole bunch of different organizations through our AAS display garden. So we have this picture here of Aspiro, which is a group with cognitive disabilities that's helped us over the years. They worked on invasive species control, and then were interested in being more involved in some other gardening activities. So we got them involved with the AAS display garden because all those AAS plants are great for beginning gardeners because they've been proven throughout the country to be easy to grow, to be high yielding, disease resistant, tasty vegetables, easy to grow flowers that are beautiful. So it's a good way for them to have success right away. This group, Aspiro, also donates the produce to Paul's Pantry for us. They volunteer there as well. And then we also have that Packers program with the Brown County that I told about. So that's like, 2 other partners that were brought into the mix. And the other thing that we've done in the recent last 2 years that might be interesting for other gardens is with all those extra seeds that Jenny mentioned that you get that you might not have room for, we still will grow all of them on. And then we donate the vegetable plants now to other groups in our community. This one group called Wello that is all about healthy eating and nutritious food. So we've donated 2,000 vegetable plants to that group to disperse to their members over the last 2 years, like 2,000 plants each year. So it's a way to get the AAS plants to an area beyond the footprint of our garden and out into the community for everyone to learn about those winners and then hopefully incorporate them into their gardens throughout the upcoming year. So just a different idea of a community garden is what we're trying to do with our display garden.
I think that's fantastic. Bring in as many people as you can and educate. Okay, next we have Terry to tell a little bit about your story. Again, more produce donations, it looks like.
Yeah, so that was one of our produce donation days, but I kind of wanted to talk about some of our marketing strategies and how we really get the word out of what our plants are within our garden. So our garden originally started because of a connection to a local television show that we have that airs from April through September here on our local PBS station. So this television show called Backyard Farmer, when I came here to the university, I brought the All-America selection with me from where I was previously. So we've actually incorporated this garden into the television show, and we use the show to help promote the new plants. So we actually have what we call the Garden Minute every week. So I actually go out into the garden and give an update of what is happening in the garden. And throughout the summer, then when that particular plant is really at its height, then that's part of that segment of that minute. So I talk about what it is, how it looks, and oftentimes growing things in Nebraska isn't quite as easy as growing things in other parts of the country. So sometimes some of the things that are really great struggle here, or depending on what our environment is, we can talk about it and showcase it. One of the other things about our garden is that we have every element available. So we have raised beds, in-ground beds, containers, We even have, some shade and some full sun, so we're able to really showcase those plants in the best light possible. And then we do use our own plant labels, and all of ours go back to have QR codes that go back to the AAS site for that specific plant. And then I've also added QR codes to the vegetables that go back to our university's food nutrition program, where they have a specific food. So if it's a tomato, it goes back to a recipe that will have a tomato in it. So that's really how we've tried to really promote and accentuate what we have here in the garden.
Great. Thank you, Terry. I love the garden minute. That's a great one. Okay. Next we have Holly.
Yes, I'm gonna talk a little how we involve different groups too. In our All-American Selection Garden. We have the local high schools, 3 different ones that will start seeds for us, and they learn about the plants, and we also give them extra seeds that they can use at their schools and with their families. And we also work with Master Gardeners, work along with special needs ARC students. They come on a weekly basis throughout the gardening months and work and learn in the gardens. And we also have childcare that's a part of us, and they jumped aboard in the planning with the gardeners on how to get our gardens more interactive with children and with families and visitors that come. So that's a little bit about our garden story.
Thank you so much. I love how you use the kids. I think in one of your design challenges, you really incorporated the children visitors. So that was awesome. That gave you a little leg up, I think, that year.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Michelle, I think you're the last one to share your garden story.
Okay, is my microphone working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So let me apologize. I think I jumped the gun a little bit earlier in my introduction and my fury to try to get this microphone working. So much like the others who have already spoken, we have really enjoyed sort of shifting a little bit our focus more into the produce. So we do incorporate master gardeners into managing this space. And like others, we also incorporate other groups, high schoolers as well, some Navy groups, since we have a couple of military bases nearby. We do occasionally get large Navy groups that have helped in this space, and also some cognitively challenged groups as well. So it's been great to have such a wide diversity of different people with different backgrounds from all ages that have been immersed in this space. One kind of a cool tangential benefit of this that we didn't really realize was much like I think it was Mark who was speaking earlier about planning. We do something similar. So we will look at the colors and the heights and the sun and water requirements and sort of collectively come together as a group to decide how we want to lay out a space in this garden. We don't use anything fancy as far as mapping tools. We just typically will use like PowerPoint or just sort of do a sketch. But what has sort of been a cool experience is some of these plants and color combinations that we explore and then implement, we have ended up using them in other parts of the garden. So they weren't necessarily AAS designated beds, but it was cool because they ended up ultimately inspiring us to do some cool designs in other high traffic parts of our garden. So it's kind of neat in that it's a tool to sort of expand color combinations in an eye for design. So it's been really multifaceted. Like I said, everything from doing a direct good, i.e. donating produce, to implementing some really cool color combinations in other parts of the garden. And that was something that we didn't really think of until it happened. So it's been really multifaceted, and it's something that we've really enjoyed and definitely will continue doing as long as the program is available.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. And now I've heard all of our panelists talk about the Landscape Design Challenge. And so Jenny is here to challenge you to participate in the 2025 Landscape Design Challenge. Jenny, you want to explain?
We are hoping that everyone will want to participate this year. As we mentioned before, the theme is STEAM in the garden: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And you can incorporate those themes however you see fit. Be creative. There's nothing that we're going to direct you with. Just try to use those in your planning and design. Remember that when it comes to the judging, the judges receive your entry, which consists of whatever you've written about your garden, plus your 6 photos. And this year, the video will be optional. However, I would highly recommend it. I think the judges really get a good sense of your space and your garden. And I would say a video with audio is kind of the gold standard. So good luck to everyone, and hopefully everybody wants to participate this year.
Yes, we really hope so. We're hoping to set some records because, like I said earlier, we think that the Landscape Design Challenge gives you a lot more promotional opportunities, and it also gives you a way to re-engage with your volunteers, your staff, and your visitors. So with that, there was a couple questions I saw that we're not going to have time to get to since our hour is already up, but it's given me a couple ideas for things we'll put in future Display Garden Dialogue newsletters. So please be on the lookout for those newsletters coming up in the next couple of months. And also the email follow-up after this webinar will include a link. It'll be a link to these PowerPoints we talked about. The QR codes, we'll be posting those, giving a link for any gardens that are wanting to make their own variety markers, etc. So just read the emails that you're getting from Jenny or from our MailChimp, from our email server that come out via Display Garden Dialogue, and we'll give you a lot more information. We're also open to tips for future webinars for our display garden. So you have the email, my email, you have Jenny's email. Feel free to send us additional questions or ideas because we're here to help you. And with that, I think we've run out of time, but thank you, everybody. Thank you, especially to our panelists for sharing your time and information. And then, yes, we will be sending additional information out about the Landscape Design Challenge. So we hope everybody has a really good year in 2025. And thank you for coming today.